Good evening. Staffordshire Police are now treating the blaze at the Crooked House pub as arson. The force says they're working with the fire service to investigate the cause and have spoken to the owners of the site. It follows calls by local politicians for an inquiry into the fire and demolition of the pub. This afternoon, forensic teams are on site going through the rubble. Liz Copper reports.
Fire investigation dogs and forensics teams were back at the Crooked House in Himley late this afternoon. Families have continued to gather in the ruins to express their sorrow and outrage at the building's fate, consoling one another and sifting through memories. Amongst them, former licensees.
We lived there for 2 years. 2 years off.
2 years.
I proposed to her there. We had our first child there. He lived there for 2 months. So even after 15 years away, it's hit hard. Yeah. It really has.
We're losing everything of value, and I don't mean monetary value, I mean historical value, that gives us our identity.
After first the fire and then the complete demolition, attention's turning to what should happen next. There are calls for it to be rebuilt.
The region will lose sight of who it is. This is a region that should be proud of itself, so seeing something so iconic and so unique to this part of the world reduced to nothing, that there's a real kind of almost violence, a brutality to it, and I think it's hard to watch.
With investigations ongoing, the local council's also considering legal action against the owners.
We did agree to a partial removal of the first floor to make the building safe. There is an ongoing investigation with ourselves, the police and fire, and until we know the developments from that, I'm not able to say a lot more.
The BBC has approached the owners who recently bought this pub. They have declined our requests for an interview or comment. Staffordshire Police have appealed for anyone who has information, including pictures, to come forward if it could help their investigation. More than 250 years of history were torn down in an afternoon. This was not just a pub, but part of the fabric of the community. And the sense of loss is acute. Liz Copper, BBC Midlands Today, Himley.
Councillor Patrick Harley is the leader of Dudley Council, which borders the Crooked House. He's backing calls for a full investigation into what happened and said he's not surprised by the public reaction to the destruction of the much-loved venue.
It's a pub, but it's quite an iconic building. It's been there for many years. It's one of those buildings that vast majority of the people in the Black Country and well beyond know of. They all know the Crooked House. A lot of people have been there. It's sad that it's not a viable as a pub business anymore. The reason is I think it's affected most people is I think the sheer haste on its demise. One day it's there, the next day it's gone, and of course then we have the wreckage and the ruins, and even they disappear a couple of days after the fire. And I think it's that speed in which the buildings disappeared, which I think has caused a huge outcry.
Some local MPs have called for a full inquiry on this. Do you agree?
Well, I think what they should do is let the police and the fire service, but they should be allowed to carry out their full investigation. And access was blocked to the fire brigade. We need answers as to why that happened and how the fire started and who started the fire and for what reason. And we also need answers on why they demolished what was left of the site so quickly. And I think people need answers to that, and if necessary, prosecutions to follow.
The West Midlands Mayor Andy Street has said he'd like to see it rebuilt. Would you?
That would be nice, but I think it's probably nigh on impossible now with what they've done to the wreckage. There'll be very little left of the original structure, very little left of the original bricks that they could use after what's happened in the last couple of days. I mean, and it is a very expensive game to rebuild and restructure these old buildings. So I think it's probably too late to rebuild it with the original materials. And I doubt whether we could recreate, what made it so iconic to people. Obviously, with it being so wonky, it would be an issue for South Staffordshire and not the West Midlands Combined Authority.
Councillor Patrick Harley, thank you for your time. And you can read more about the demolition of the Crooked House and what it means to local people on the BBC Birmingham and Black Country News website.